Hey everyone, welcome back to Midnight Confessions. I'm David, your guide through the darker corners of America, where true fear hides behind familiar walls. Every story here is more than just a tale. It's a whisper of something that might still be out there. So turn off the lights, settle in, and listen carefully. Because tonight's confession comes from somewhere very close to home. All right, guys, let's dive into tonight's story. Just make sure your doors are locked. This one hits a little too close to home.
It was one of those neighborhoods that seemed peaceful only on the surface, a quiet stretch of aging row houses, each one pressed shoulder to shoulder like weary soldiers holding the line. The lawns were neat, the porches tidy, and every window glowed with the comforting yellow light of ordinary lives. But in neighborhoods like this, evil doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers through the walls. Her name was Lisa Harper, 34, lived alone, a soft-spoken woman who paid her bills on time and baked cookies for her co-workers every Christmas. After her divorce, she'd wanted something simple, somewhere she could start over. The narrow row house she rented looked perfect for that. Affordable, quiet, but quiet doesn't always mean safe. Her neighbor was a man named Greg Milner. He was in his mid-40s, with hollow eyes and a face that always looked damp, as if sweat never left him. The first time she saw him, he was standing on his porch at midnight, just staring at nothing. Their first real interaction came when Lisa moved in. Greg offered a curt nod and said, "Walls are thin around here." She laughed politely. "That's okay, I don't make much noise." He stared at her for a beat too long before answering. "Doesn't matter, it comes through anyway." She didn't know what that meant at the time. The first few weeks were uneventful, until the nights grew restless. Lisa started hearing strange noises through the wall. Not loud enough to complain about, just unnerving. A low scraping sound. A faint tapping. Then, sometimes, a series of slow, deliberate thuds. She'd lie awake, staring at the ceiling, telling herself the house was old. Pipes. Rats. Anything but what it sounded like. A man working methodically in the dark. Once she heard him talking to himself, a muffled, agitated voice, repeating something like a prayer. "She hears me. She hears me through the wall. I can feel her listening." Lisa pressed her pillow over her head and told herself it was none of her business. At work, she tried to joke about it. "My neighbor's a bit of a night owl," she told her friend, Aaron. "He's always hammering or something, like 3 in the morning." Aaron frowned. "That's creepy. Maybe he's building something." Lisa smiled weakly. "Or someone." They both laughed, but the chill in Lisa's stomach didn't fade. That night, when she came home, she saw Greg standing on his porch again, only this time he was staring directly at her window. When she met his eyes, he smiled faintly, then raised one hand and placed it flat against the wall that separated them. Lisa closed her blinds. Over the next few days, Lisa began noticing things, little things, a new crack in the basement wall, dust on the floor that hadn't been there before. She told herself it was nothing, but her mind kept circling back to Greg. Why was he always awake? Why did she keep hearing scraping sounds from the basement at night? One night, unable to sleep, she wrote in her journal, "Maybe I'm just lonely. Maybe that's why everything feels louder. I keep imagining things in the dark. I keep telling myself he's harmless, but what if I'm wrong?" She almost laughed at herself, reading it back. "You're becoming paranoid, Lisa. It's just a wall." But even as she wrote it, she could hear him humming next door. A soft, tuneless sound that made the hairs on her arms stand up. When detectives later went through Greg Milner's journals, they found pages of obsessive scribbles. The handwriting changed mid-sentence, words overlapping each other. "The woman next door thinks through the wall. She knocks when I sleep. She steals my dreams." But one page was different. Clearer, calmer, almost reflective, a flashback in his own mind. He remembered being 12. His mother had locked him in the basement for breaking her favorite lamp. She said, You stay down there until you stop hearing things." He'd screamed for hours, pounding the walls until his hands bled. When she finally opened the door, she smiled sweetly and whispered, "No one heard you, did they?" From that day forward, Greg swore he could still hear her in the walls, scratching, whispering, even after she died. When Lisa moved in next door, he became convinced that the voice had returned, only now it wore her face. "She's in the wall again. She's behind me when I sleep." He started removing bricks, one at a time, quietly, carefully, every night, closer. Lisa's fear deepened. She'd find muddy footprints on her porch in the mornings, or her garbage cans tipped over. Once, she saw Greg standing by her fence, muttering to himself. She decided to confront him, politely at first. "Greg, could you maybe keep it down at night? The noises, I can hear—" He interrupted her. "I know you can. You're always listening." Lisa froze. "Excuse me?" "You tap when I sleep," he said, his voice flat. "You knock 3 times. I hear it." I don't do that," she whispered. Greg smiled thinly. "You don't think you do." He turned and went back inside, slamming the door. That night, the pounding on the wall was louder than ever. Lisa couldn't take it anymore. She went down to the basement with a flashlight, determined to see what was causing the noise. The air was damp and cold, and the smell, metallic, sour, made her stomach turn. She aimed the beam at the wall. In one spot near the floor, the mortar looked fresh. Crumpled dust littered the ground. She crouched down and pressed her ear against the wall. Silence. Then, faintly, breathing. Slow, shallow. She stumbled backward, the flashlight trembling in her hands. "He's there! He's right on the other side!" She ran upstairs, locked the basement door, and sat on the couch until dawn. When morning came, she told herself she was overreacting. She'd call the landlord, maybe even the police, but she never got the chance. That Monday, she didn't show up for work. Her coworkers thought she was sick. By Wednesday, they started calling. No answer. By Thursday, they filed a wellness check. When officers arrived, they found the front door unlocked, coffee on the counter, lights still on. They called out her name. Nothing. Then, from the basement, came a sound, an electric saw. They followed the noise down the stairs, guns drawn. The air grew colder with each step. The saw stopped. At the far end of the basement, a few bricks had been carefully removed from the dividing wall. Through the small hole, the officers' flashlights pierced into the darkness beyond, revealing Greg Milner standing over a workbench soaked in blood. He didn't move as they shouted commands. He just whispered something under his breath. "She's quiet now." When they broke through the wall, he smiled faintly, as if he'd been expecting them. They arrested him without a fight. Back at the station, they left him in the back of the police van while filing reports. 20 minutes later, when they opened the door, Greg was dead. He had hanged himself with his belt. The case was closed. But the horror didn't end there. Forensics found traces of older blood in his basement, years old. They discovered multiple unfinished holes between the houses, some sealed, some fresh. It seemed Greg had tried to reach his neighbors before. When the media got a hold of the story, they called it the man behind the wall. But to those who lived nearby, it wasn't a story. It was a reminder of how thin the line really is, how fragile those bricks can be when madness starts clawing from the other side. Lisa's house was eventually sold,
The new owners repaired the basement wall, painted it, sealed it tight. But no matter how thick the plaster, the stains underneath never really disappeared. They say at night, if you stand in that basement and listen long enough, you can still hear it. 3 soft knocks. Maybe it's the pipes, maybe it's the foundation settling, or maybe, just maybe, Greg Milner never left the wall. This is Midnight Confessions, and I'm David. Remember, when the night gets too quiet, it's not always peace you're hearing. Sometimes it's just the wall, breathing. This has been Midnight Confessions. I'm David, reminding you that sometimes the scariest stories aren't fiction, they're warnings. If tonight's tale kept you looking over your shoulder, you're not alone. Darkness has a way of finding us all. Until next time, stay curious, stay cautious, and stay in the dark.